All right, welcome everybody to Pen Turning 95.5 because we're not ready for 101 yet. So I'm gonna go through a few steps on turning a pen, preparing the blanks and getting ready. And then I've actually got one that we'll turn on the lathe a little bit. I mean, it's all pretty straightforward. So we can start by any one of these black first grain wood, and these are acrylic blanks, right? KMS handles these, and they just come in various colors, and some of them are pretty nice when you get them turned down, right? So you can use anything you want, right? These are 3/4 inch, I believe, is what they usually call for. Just a little bigger, it's just barely over 3/4 of an inch, right? So that gives you enough room to get it in the lathe, drill the centers, cut them, do all the kind of stuff we need to do, right?
Now,
So,
Keith, if you're turning an acrylic blank, do you need to use a carbide tool?
I use my EasyWood tools,
Okay.
the carbide usually,
Okay.
and I've used my scraper too. It's fine cuts because it chips badly, right?
Okay.
But it will actually, when we get to the mandrel, it'll actually spin on the mandrel before it kind of falls apart, right? So on this one, I don't know if you can see. Did I do it on this one? Yeah, okay. Now, it's really hard to see in the light, but you can see the grain, whatever it's going to get. That's going to be kind of a pretty grain, right? But before I cut it, let's go back to the start here. Sorry, I don't act well under pressure. When you get your pen kit, it's going to come with all the necessary pieces. These are the tubes that go in the wood blanks. There's 2 of those. There's a shirt clip, the tips, top and bottom, and this is the turning mechanism that makes it go up and down inside, right? So it comes as a kit, right? So then what you have to do is you have to take this tube and put it inside the blank, right? So what I do, because you need just a little bit of room, you can lay that right on top, and you can mark that just a little bit long if you want, right?
Okay.
And then you can do it again, right? A little bit of room, mark, and then you'll cut those off, right? I usually end up with a couple little cutoffs on the longer blanks. I throw them in the drawer because every once in a while they're handy, right? So then you take this blank and you cut it into 2 pieces, which you end up like this, right? Now before you cut it, what you do, and this is where I don't know if you can see, and you can use different things here. On the side of it here, I've penciled it a lot, right? Before I cut it. And the only reason for that is it gives you grain orientation. So when you put it back together, which may or may not be important, right? On the acrylics, it really doesn't matter. And on this, not so much either. But when you drill it and put it on the mandrel, you can line those up and start with it and just kind of keep things separately, right? So then what I do is I take these things. Now, can we move everything over to here?
You bet. Yep.
Hopefully we can see here. Is that on?
Yep.
So then you end up with the blanks. There's one that's already been drilled. I put that in my chuck. Couple things. When I first started doing this, I didn't have this chuck. I just had this one. And the blanks don't fit in that one to drill very well, right? And I tried doing it on the drill press. I had a little stand made up, and the hole always came out a little crooked, right? Then I made 4 of these that just slipped over there, and then this thing would fit in the middle, and it would clamp on all corners, and it worked pretty good, right? And then I got this one, which I was playing with it here a little bit. When you get it set right, you can just put that in there.
And that you can clamp on the flats instead of on the corners.
Yeah, and it just gets clamped in there, and there it goes, right? And it should run fairly true. Now, in the pin kits, there's a lot of little stuff that goes along with it. I think it's a 7mm drill for the tubes that I have here, right? But there's different size drills for different size tubes, and if you get the right drill, it works much better, right? So this one is for these tubes. So what I do is just set up, and now it's spinning really close. This is a brad point, so I can just put it up in there and just start cranking that in there, right? And whatever this wood is, I don't know what this wood is or not either.
You've got that turning fairly quickly,
It's fairly quick. And so I've only got about 1.5 inches travel on my tailstock here. So I have to regroup a little bit. Then I just poke it in. And depending on the wood, the acrylic is a little different too. You got to watch the temperature on your bit, right? So if it's going to get warm on you, then you need to slow down. When I drilled this the other day, and I was almost through, and so you just push it on through, right? I know it drills pretty fast and pretty easy. And then when I come in to have a look at it, that one's fairly close. That one's almost close, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay, because then these become your centers and you turn to that, so it's gone. You just don't want it running right out to the edge where you don't have enough meat left over to do the job, right? So then when these are done, and if we go back over here, we're going to change our other camera again. Hold on a minute.
Okay.
Okay. So then we bring these over here, and then we have these tubes that slip inside, right? And they're just a little sloppy, which is fine, because they have to be glued in. Now, depending on where you watch, who you listen to, there's everything from CA glue to epoxy to you name it, right? I use the 5-minute epoxy from KMS. That seems to work fine, right? But what you have to do is fairly grit, roughing gouge, 80 grit. Take it and sand this, right? It's a smooth brass. So I usually sand it, and I usually do it crossways, right? I'll just spin it just to take the glaze and the rough off and give it a little bit of adhesion, right? I've had inserts that actually move after. So that's what they say, all you need is to be roughed up a little bit, right? Then I mix the epoxy. Valuable pin turning tool, because what I do is stick it on there, then I spread the epoxy on here. I mix it on a little piece of paper, my little tool, I wipe it all over there, and then you take this and just work it in there until it kind of comes off. And I don't know if you can see, but you just want to make sure that that little brass insert is not close to the edge, right? And it moves really easy right now. So 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 there, a little bit more there. So when it's glued up, that's where you want it. So it's in there, right? And then you end up with ones like this. Now this one I tried some plastic, some Play-Doh. I've heard it, people say Play-Doh, but I don't know if it really difference. It's supposed to keep the glue from going in the tube, but it really doesn't anyway, because on the end going in, all the glue is on the tube following, right? So there's no glue in this. I don't put any glue in here. I just smear it all over this. So when you set that in there, all the glue is on this part that you go in there. And so when it's on my little center punch, I get it stuck on there, and I just work it around and back and forth, because it kind of sticks to it, until I feel that the glue is worked all the way around and the ends are in from the edge. You can see that one's in a little bit from the edge, and this one will be too, right? And then let it dry. And then that is the blank almost prepared, right? So we stop it. Now, how to trim the end of the blank. If you Google this stuff, there's 100 different ways of doing things, and everybody has their own pet little thing. Some will put it on a table saw and just keep running it through until you hit the end of the brass tube, right? That kind of works. Some use the disc sander, right, and just run it on there, right? But they make a tool for it, right? And this tool, again, different sizes. This one fits in the tube, right? And then like that. And then it's got cutters on it. So what you can do, and I've done it holding my hand, but my hands aren't as strong as they used to be, and if it catches, it hurts. So you just slide that in there, and this is, and there'll be a little bit of glue in this end, and it doesn't take very much, right? So what you want to do is keep watching my tube is down. My tube is down.
Now, will you hear that when it hits the brass, Keith?
No. No, you have to be careful because it will blank just a little bit too, right?
Now, is that tool a tool that you could get at KMS, do you think, or?
I would imagine KMS handles them.
Okay,
Lee Valley for sure.
okay,
And again, depending on what pin kit you're using, and I should have talked about that too. So now we're just there, I think. So if you look at that really close, right in here, you can just see the edge of the brass. Like I could take just a little bit more of that. When you hit it just right, that little brass ring will just turn bright because you're just skimming the end of the ring or the tube. And you want to stop because if you take too much, it throws the adjustment of the pin off. That is designed for the pin to go together and all work like it's supposed to, right? So the way this, I would just take this just a little. So there it's a little more visible. That's about all you need, right?
okay.
It's just a little brass ring, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so my problem with the other methods is how do you do that on a table saw, right? It's skim, 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 skim. Oh, it's too far, right? And the same with the belt sander, disc sander, you could do it. But it's not important that that end is straight, but kind of, right? And I'll talk about that in a minute. Let's just trim the other end here. I'm just going to turn it to both this way just a little bit. And the other thing this tool does is when it goes in the tube, it keeps the cutter square to the tube, so the ends are square, right?
Yes.
And that may or may not make a difference depending on what you're doing, right?
I can see where you have much better control with that tool than you would with the table saw.
Yeah. So again, that's the other end. You can just barely see the brass.
Yep.
And that's where you want to end because this distance is all part of the pin kit that everything fits together. So when you put the insides together, the twisty unit, everything works, right? So I'm just going to do this other one quick because this is the pin we're going to turn. So I need these.
Now, a question for Dick. Can we use a pink drill?
Can you use a pink one?
Yeah, because he's got the pink hair dryer, so.
I don't know, right? We support all colors, right? So now you can see this one pretty good. A little brass, and a little brass, right?
Yes.
And you also notice that the hole wasn't completely centered, right? If you go looking for a kit, and this is a Lee Valley kit that I got quite some time ago. And I went looking to see what bushings I needed for it. This is discontinued. And I had a terrible time finding what bushings were supposed to fit for it. And in fact, if I had it, because if you just swing over here for a minute, Scott, this is my bushing tray, right? Each one has a set of bushings that goes for a different pin kit.
Okay.
So, and this is the one that I need, right? So, and I just put the number, this is a Lee Valley number on it, 88K7108. And so this is the one that when you turn, determines, let me throw this stuff out, that everything fits, right? Because you get all these pieces. So when this gets turned, because when you're done, this actually gets pressed into the end of that tube. It's a press fit, and I have a pin press that I didn't unpack to put it together, right? And so with the bushing, when you have this bushing, and I'll put it on the mandrel and show you, but that bushing will equal the same size as that. So when you turn to the bushing with your wood, it's the right diameter. That'll make more sense in a minute after I install it on the mandrel, right? So this is the mandrel. These are extra spacers that I have just because sometimes you want it a little farther away from the work. So I don't want to mix those up. But then I'll put this one on here, and I'll put that one on there, and I'll put this one on here, and I'll put that one on there, and we'll put I need to I said, well, I'll make one, right? So, okay, back to what we have. I have a little spacer on the end, and then the sizing spacer for the blank, sizing spacer for the blank, sizing spacer for the blank, and then a little narrow nut just goes on the end and holds it all together. Now, if you're really excited about this, did I mark this one? Yeah. I think that's, it'll change, and that's okay, right? So that's how it gets mounted on the mandrel piece, right? So, and this is not super tight. It stays. Sometimes you'll get a little catch and it'll spin, but that's okay. You just back off and do it again, right? So then this goes in the lathe.
So that's all on a Morse taper?
Yeah, it just slides in there, right? And that's all you need to do. And then this side. So when I did this for my lathe, I found this Morse taper someplace, and this chuck I bought as a chuck and put it together. It works really well. Then what I did is I drilled a hole in the end of it and threaded it. So I drilled this hole in the end of it and threaded it because sometimes you want to go if I want to use this in here, then I go with the bolt through my headstock, and that screws in there, and it keeps it from falling out. And so works really well, right? It was actually fairly easy to drill and tap. So
And where do you buy those wooden nuts, Keith?
the what?
The wooden nut on the end of that shaft.
Oh, well, that's special order. So this is just in there. This is your standard lathe center, goes in there. Now, this is the important part. That's just a snug fit as always. When you tighten this up, it's just snug. If you tighten it too much, you'll actually bend that mandrel and you'll get off center. You'll get a wobble in it, right? So it doesn't have to be tight. It just has to be snug enough to keep it from flopping around, right? And sometimes this won't turn really well, but it's okay. So if I turn it on, that's what it does, right? And so my mandrel's running pretty straight, and then it's just a matter of turning that off to what it wants. So what else did I need to say here? Anything? So now, the Shop Safety 101. I got to say, if I was here doing this myself with the pen blank, I probably wouldn't wear my mask because I'm not too worried about the pen blank exploding, right? I mean, they can, and it might, but I don't think it will, right? But anyway, in the interest of future YouTube videos, that's what I do. Everybody knows this is my favorite thing. I'm just going to sharpen them today a little bit. Grinder's over in the corner. So now you can see when I started working this a little bit, this actually went into the headstock, and so it's not spinning here, and that's where the squeal was coming from, right? So you just open that up a little bit, take a little pressure again, and then it'll go, right? Because as that seats in there, then it becomes more loose here, right? But still not enough pressure to pull it.
So Keith, the tool you're using is a...
This is a scraper, 1-inch scraper.
Okay.
Terry's sitting there saying he should sharpen that. Yes, it should have.
Should I phone him and ask?
But this is, it's a roughing turn, and what I'm going to do is just get it down to where it's round, and then we'll retool it. This one's almost round. I got a little bit of a flat spot, so we take just a little bit more. It doesn't really matter that it's perfectly flat. I mean, perfectly round because it's all going to go away anyway.
Keith, it looks like you're turning that fairly quickly. Do you know roughly what speed you're turning at?
It says it's 26, no, let's see, I'm on the third one. 1800.
Okay.
Pardon my
Okay.
belt. I should put my smock on. So I'm pretty well round all the way around, right? And so now, what kind of a shape do we want, right? I'll just be right back. Don't know what I've got. Two different things. Okay. Part of the little pen kit are these, right? So this is the top of the pin, way up on the top here. And then this will press on for the clip, right? It'll go through the clip and in to the tube on the blank, right? This goes in between them to space them, and it slides over the turning mechanism, the whatever they call it. And then this goes in the end where the nib comes out. So as I said earlier, these bushings set these diameters, and they're all the same on this pin, right? Some of them are different. Some of them you'll get a really narrow waist, some of them you get a big fat one, and it's whatever you want to do. So, what do you want to do?
I suppose
Maybe
it
just
would
stop.
make.
It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
All right, so as I said earlier, from here on in, this thing is not going to go anywhere now. And so I've never had a pin come apart, so I'm confident that it will stay in place. So now, what do you want your pen to look like?
I suppose it would depend if you're turning it for a male or a female. Guy
Could be.
might like a little fatter pen, woman
Could
a nice
be.
slender one.
I've seen some pens that are fairly thick, top and bottom, and then have a skinny little waist. I don't like that.
I don't care for that either.
I don't like the looks of it and whatnot. So I tend to be, I want to make it rolling, but it just depends. So I'm going to say this is the tip. This is where the tip goes, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is just work this down a bit. And now there's a word of caution here that I've learned. You can run your tool right down on the metal, and it may or may not be good for either one, right? It will polish the bushing a little bit, may take the edge off your thing. I use the Carbide Easy tool, and so if it does, you can just spin that a little bit. But what you don't want to do is go down below that bushing. You can go down and touch it, but otherwise, you know, the object at the end of the game is when you come from the tip to the piece, you can't feel it.
Now that's very close. Given that this is a very open poured wood, would you recommend maybe sand down to the line?
Maybe.
Because you'd probably want to sand it.
Yeah, I would go a little more. I'll just play with it and see, right? And so, working the rest of it here. Did we start that one again?
Yeah, we sure did.
Okay. I haven't done one of these in a while. The other part I like is, and I will just bring that down a little.
I like the idea of the ball in the middle, but you wouldn't want to make it sharp, would you?
No, it's not sharp, so it gets sanded off a little bit after. And I know there's kind of a feel where that is, and I'm not sure exactly where I'm at.
When I do my seam rippers. I always have my wife hold them because she's got a female hand and she'll tell me that's too big in the middle or,
Yeah.
so I understand where you're coming from about the feet.
So what I might do here is I'll just work down to this end here, and I'll make it. My goal would have it to become down and just a little bit of shape here, right? And so I don't want to take a lot off there. I want to take a little more off here. Because as I said, I don't want the really narrow waist. And if you don't, I don't know if it'll show up on the camera, but if I touch that tool,
Oh, yeah.
it will take off, right?
Okay.
And so if you do that enough, your sizing's off, right? And so, I mean, bushings are cheap, they're $4 or $5 a set, but why would you want to get one if you don't have to?
My hobby is turning wood, not spending money at the tool store.
Oh, come on now. We know that's not true.
That was for my wife.
So I'm going to take that front just a little bit more. So I just touched the bushing there, which is good. Right? I know people don't like my scraper tools, but
They work. And you've got a fairly nice finish on that.
it comes out pretty good, right? And that's why I like the higher speed,
Yes.
spin it faster, and just
And I
Just
have
touch it.
trouble with my carbide tools, and I think that might be why, is I'm not going fast enough.
like with these, it's just so fast
Yeah.
and very light cuts, right? You're not hogging off a lot of wood, right? And so then when you get to the other end, so you remember we have the little button. We have the little button that's the top of it. And
That's good.
here. And so when it goes together, this is the shirt clip. It goes over that. It's a tight fit, fairly. That's how it fits. And then that gets pressed into the end of the blank. So the problem being here is you can't have your blank big and fat on this end where the button is, or it won't fit,
Yes.
right? And so it's important to do this spacing. Now I've done ones where the blank will come down. Let's see. I was gonna take out a few of my pens, but I don't. And this will be a artist drawing, of course. Button plug, right? And then the clip goes down, the knob there fits there, right? And I've done it where I've maybe played in here a little bit, and then you can come up and make a little knob right there, and then do whatever else you want with your thing. So it's not, so the clip actually rests on the spot where it touches, and so like this one's flat, right? The whole thing's flat, and it works, right? I mean, it works fine. But the beauty of this is you can do whatever you want, right? But this dimension is critical, right? Because if it's too fat, it won't go in. And so, and then if you want to make a knob there, this is going to be pretty close, and that will disappear, but you can make a mark there and play to that mark too a little bit, right? So again, taking off the video, and I'll just leave that there for a minute. What's that smell like?
Walnut.
Think so? I didn't think it was.
I used enough table saw blades to know what the walnut smells like.
Are you saying I'm burning it?
No, I'm saying we're getting it hot like that's all. Because you are turning very fast. So.
So now the other thing to remember is when we use the tool on the end of the blank is square. Because when it's in the tube and you cut it off, and it's been cleaned, you saw what it looked like when it was polished off. So you don't have to worry about getting in here and dressing up the end of the blank. It's done, right? Like for all intents and purposes, it's already done, right?
And it's covered up with the brass.
Yeah, right? And so
You've got a pretty light touch this stuff too as well. You're not trying to hog out all the material all at once.
I found it's very hard to put wood back on. A light touch on something small is probably good. Right? Now, what you can do if you want, I don't know if this will show up. Remember this little knobby thing is the size of the bushing, right? And so when it's in there, and it's hard to see, but I still need to take some more wood out to make it fit, right? So I'm going to go down almost to that bushing again, but then I'm gonna play with the barrel just a little bit when I get to that point. So what I may do here is I can just sand that a little bit, just take that edge just a little bit, because I think I'm good for size there. Because that bushing is the plug, so the distance between the bushing and the edge of my wood will fit in here, right? I believe. Might be close. I might take just a tad more. They don't, depending on the pin, it doesn't give you a lot of room. The other thing you want to watch is not go too deep, because if you hit the brass tube, you're done. Right? It's over then, because you can't do that. So as long as you stay the height of this, you're going to be okay. There's still be quite a bit of meat in there. But if you get fancy gouging and shaping, just don't go to the brass tube, right? So I've got just a little flare on this. I'm going to just take that just a little bit. Now I'm going to come up here and work it. Give it just a little bit on that end. I think I have a little bit here, just barely, so it's going to be pretty close. And I can calibrate this now. Stabbing myself here. So again, if I just set that on there, and I move my point a little bit,
So Keith, what you're saying is you want to leave this a little bit proud so that it's even with the brass on the outside of the plug.
no, the brass will be the same size as this.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Let me just
Okay.
double check that, because I've got my fancy tool here. So this That is just over 1/4 of an inch. No, just over 5/16. So, so when you put that on there, it's just over 5/16, right? And then when I put it on here, I'm just over 5/16 as well.
Okay.
So that plug is the same size as that bushing, right?
Okay.
But I can do just a slight round over underneath that, just to leave it a little bit and just dress it up, right?
Yes.
And it'll be just a little proud all the way around, but not lots, right?
Yeah.
So where my pencil mark is here, that's what I'm going to make my just little high spot. And you don't want very much, because if you do, then it won't fit right. So now, the other thing I will do, the mini scoot, it's only used for one reason. And this is where you can just go crazy, right? And so I can come in here. I use it with the point up, and I just stick it in there. Just to add, I don't know what, right? Because you can, right? And so, for all intents and purposes, we're almost done, right? This is 320. So we'll see if it works.
So Keith, a lot of your bushings and that you bought from Lee Valley, but I would think that person could get that sort of thing from KMS without a problem?
It depends, right? When I first came here and was getting a bunch of them, they had nothing, right?
But
And you would say,
I've
can you
seen-
order? Yeah, and you say, can you order me some? Yeah, but it'd be like 6 weeks.
But I think they've gotten a lot better, haven't they?
I think they have a little bit, right?
I prefer to shop local if I
Oh, for
can.
sure, right?
But I go in there and they have a really nice wall of hand turning stuff, but I didn't know what it was for, so.
Yeah. Right? And so I agree. If we can shop locally, we should, right? Now, this is just a little fast for sanding, I think, right? But again, it's super light touch, right?
Now what grit is that?
This is 320.
So you start with 320.
It was right there, right? It's, I don't know, right? I mean, it's with acrylic. I start, acrylic is tough because you got marks that'll show up, right? Even with your tools, right? So you kind of have to, I found with acrylic, you can't cut the corner, right? You have to start and work through your grits, right? And you don't be aggressive, right? It's a little bit, then the next one a little bit. The first is a little aggressive to try and get it up, but once you start getting down, then the next grit just takes the prior grit out almost, but leaves itself, right?
I've also found with the acrylic that if I use my Beal system with the white abrasive and then the polishing paste, it'll take a lot. If you've got any little scratch or imperfection, it'll take it out because it's fairly soft.
Yeah. So that is, that's close. I don't know how fussy I'm going to get on which one this one is. There's just a little bit of an edge on this one here. So if you want to work that down a little bit, it's gonna be.
So I can certainly see where when people sell these pens, they want to get well paid for them because you've got a fairly good investment in equipment there.
Well, you do. And, I mean, after you get fiddling with it a bit, it goes pretty quick, right?
But still, I mean, you've got money spent on mandrels and bushings and different sets of bushings, and then you've got your pen kits, so.
You do, right? And I mean, and if you're doing one kind of pen all the time, that's okay, right? You only need one set of bushings, but you know, every pen kit takes a different bushing.
Yes.
And so if you want to do multiple ones, right? And I've done, you can get pens for yo-yos, your kits for yo-yos, the seam rippers like you do, the different things like, you know, whatever you want, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so, and the other bad thing is between, what is it? Is it William Penwright? That one there, Lee Valley, KMS. None of their kits are the same number. They may have the same bushing, but they're all numbered different.
They use their own numbers so that.
So you don't know the size. You know, we
Yes.
keep track, right? So this is kind of a handy tool at times, right?
Now, I
You can
notice
measure.
yours reads in 16ths.
Yeah. Well, it's.
That's very handy. Mine is in thousandths or millimeters, and that
Yeah.
one is,
For most stuff I do,
that's perfect.
it actually goes down a little bit lower because if you look at it, there's a 16th, so I can go 4 below that, right?
Okay.
So there's a 32nd,
Yeah.
and there's a 64th, right? So that's close enough for me, right?
That's a very nice caliper.
And then I'll promote it. It's made by, I get it at iGauge, craftsmans.com or something like that. He's got a website, right? It's out of the States. I think it was $50.
Okay.
I had one before, and I never noticed some of the screws came loose. So I lost the backing plate here, and it kind of wobbles around. It's on the wall there, right? So I thought I'll just get another one. I also got an electronic one that does metric and fractions too.
But that's close enough for anything we're doing.
It works just fine for me. That's why I got another one, because I like it so much. And the trouble with my electronic one I find is every time, because I don't use it very often, and every time I don't use it, I have to take the battery out. Because the next time when I use it, the battery's dead.
Mhm.
And so that's a bit of a pain, right? Because then when battery in and out, it doesn't always come on, right?
Yes.
So now that's almost to the point. Like I would sand that more probably, but I'm not going to right now. So a couple things I do, right? I sand down the acrylic, and I don't use it on this so much. But for my acrylic ones, I have this set of pads from Lee Valley, and I think they goes up to 12,000 grit, and that's a pretty fine polish for the.
That's the same thing Susan used when she did the C8 glue finish.
Yeah, you need things polished up pretty good there. And the other thing I've done on acrylic is I'll use like an automotive turtle wax cut polish. That works really good.
Mhm.
Everybody's gonna laugh at this one. Crest toothpaste works really good because it's got a little bit of grit in it. As a sideline, we used to use it on the helicopter windows because they're all plexiglass, and it would clean them right up, right? But you need lots of water. You need lots of water with it, right? And even with these, I use water, right? I got a little dish, I got water here, I got my towels down and everything. Everything is just soaking wet. And these are the first grit, wipe it off. Second grit, like it's not, you're not grinding on it, you're polishing, right? And working down, and so then it will go down. The other thing I've used at times, I've tried everything, right, to kind of get a finish. And this works too, right? This one's kind of worn out, but a good piece of Scotch-Brite will go a long ways in the final buffing thing, right?
And you can get different grits of
You
that.
can get different grits of that, right? And like I say, this one's pretty worn out. It's all soft and not really sharp anymore. But you can see the difference it's making a little bit, right? And so, you know, if you work that a little bit, and then even that made quite a difference, right?
Yes.
Right?
Now, what would you use to finish this wooden pin, Keith?
I used to be able to get a thing called Turner polish, right?
Yeah?
And it disappeared. There's this.
That's the fine woodworkers wax from Lee Valley.
And I've used, so I've used this, right? And it's a friction finish, right? So what that means is you put it on and spin it until it gets warm,
Yes.
right? Like and you want it fairly warm. That helps it set, right? And so that will work. I've used this stuff.
Howard Feed and Wax?
Yeah,
Gord uses a lot of that as well.
I think this is all part of it. No. And then there's this one, the shallow wax,
Yes.
right?
Now,
And that works. And then,
the shallow wax, you've got the rubbing compound
yeah,
and then the wax to go on after it. So
yeah. And I believe that you put the wax on first. I haven't used it for quite a while.
I always use the polishing stuff,
I did too, right?
but I've always been too cheap to buy the wax. I just use my beeswax and mineral oil.
So use on lathe after sanding and prior to applying shallow wax.
Okay. So
So the wax must kind of fill the grain a little bit and do that, polish it up. And then you put this on for the finish, right?
Okay.
And so that works. And then this kind of works, but this is more for boards and stuff, right? I've used that on cutting boards and different things where I want to do it. So, so one of these three, I've got this. You can see how much of that I've used. Actually, have you tried that?
No, I haven't.
It says it's a crystal coat liquid friction finish, right?
Okay.
So you can see I don't use it. It had to be shaken up a lot like that. But it's water repellent and wear resistant. So it would probably work for the pens. Lathe turning carvers and flat surfacing, right? Formulated to use as a final and only finish on many projects, right? So but it's really kind of separated out, right? But anyway, so there's lots of choices. And people, like you said, Susan does a CA glue. I tried it. I don't like it. I've never gotten a good finish out of it.
I'm not smart enough to keep my fingers from sticking on the project.
You can use a plastic bag, use a baggie,
Mm-hmm.
put your hand in the baggie. Be careful it doesn't stick, right? But you can do that and just squirt a little bit on it and then just run it lightly, and then you have to let it dry. And I think I'm too impatient, right? And so when it's when I'm in more of a hurry, then I do more. And I'll just do this a little bit just to see what this is going to look like. Right? So as we discovered, we'll put some of this on. This is just
It's a buffing compound.
so yeah.
It'll do your final sand. Axe makes a product. There's another fellow that makes a product that's on YouTube all the time, but this is exactly the same as an Axe product, I believe.
So what I do is just put it on there, right? And make sure that you've got enough. It can be all over the bushings. You have to watch sometimes when you get into some of your polishes, if it's polishing and grindy a little bit, if it's kind of, you know, the little grit with it, it'll transfer color from your bushings to your wood. Because you'll actually grind your bushing a little bit too, and it'll turn black a little bit, right? So what I do is just smear it on like that. Take my same paper towel. I use it underneath and just rub it again. Don't ever wrap your hand around it, because it just won't be good, right? And you can see that it kind of does. You can try it a little bit. I have to say this? I saw a video one time. Guy had his young daughter in the shop showing her how to sand. Her hand was in a plastic bag inside a hollow vessel, and she was sanding or putting finish on the inside. And I thought, she's going to lose her arm, right? That is just so stupid, right?
Yes.
So the same with this, don't ever wrap it around it.
Yeah.
Just rub against it, right? Because that's all you need. And you can feel it when it gets a little warm. It will work, right? If you want to do some more, you can do some more, right? And now, these might be a little issue, right? But the other thing you can do, and if you get your rag in there with your little fingernail, now the other thing I've done after making that little decorative mark is you can take something like this piece of wire. This is bigger than my grooves are, and what you do is just throw them in there, put it on the groove, and pull, and it burns it, and it'll burn a little mark on it, right? So if I was going to do that with this, because this is fairly heavy, this is safety wire we used to use on the helicopters and stuff, right? Stainless steel.
That's a lot thinner than the piano wire that we got at the meeting that night.
Was it?
Yes.
And I've got some thinner stuff too. I can go right down to, I've got some 020 or 022 or something, but I think this is 032. But it works. But again, right? Never, ever wrap the wire around your fingers. And you don't have to pull hard. You don't have to do this. You can just work it underneath like that. And believe me, if you pull on it, it will burn, right? But you don't want to get it to the point where it may pick up. I mean, where if it grabbed, you don't want to pull your fingers off. And so the little wooden knobs on the end work fine, right? And you can just keep using the same piece over and over and over and over. So now this is a shallow wax. This is a Wood Turner's Fiction Polish. Shake mixture before use, yeah, because it's been sitting on my shelf for a long time. And actually it looks like that this, my incomplete sanding, I'm going to take the lid off because this, I haven't used this for so long. And the little flip lid is not. So I can do this like this. I don't make a big mess. And again, right, just, now, this might not be the right way to do it. Well, this is the way I do it, right? Because you just want to get it coated up a little bit and wet. And then, don't do like I do and forget to put the lid on, knock it off on the floor. That's not good. And again, you can just take after it, and you can use where you put it on. You can feel it pull. It'll get just a little sticky as it dries. Get a new piece of rag. I also use, I always keep towels in my shop, and these work very good too if you just use the corner of it. You don't want it, it's soft and it's like the polish is fairly nice, right? So you can do anything like that you want to go. I don't know if something like the poly finish works as well.
That's left an absolutely gorgeous finish.
It's actually, I suppose if you looked at it really close, you'd probably notice that it wasn't sanded perfectly down, right?
If you were a wood turner or a woodworker, you might look at it close, but most people are going to have the hand feel of a pen.
So what it's done, and you just knock this out, and then, I don't know which, does it show up there? Or we can,
Oh, this one's quit.
oh, did it turn itself off?
Okay.
So we can go here, and you won't be able to see it probably. You get a little shine on it there now.
Here,
Right?
let's try from a different angle.
Sometimes we might have too much glare on it from the light, right? So where are we at here? So you can just see the little bit of sheen on it, and the scratch marks aren't showing up very well, right? I only sanded that with 2 grits of paper, right? And so if I went down I started at 320. I think the other one's probably at 200 or something. But if I went down to 400 or 600, it just gets better and better, right? So now, we'll say for all intents and purposes, it's done, right? We'll do it. So now we just back it off here. And this is where, how I know this. It's important to keep your bushings together, right? Because if you just throw them on the floor or on the bench, you may lose it, right? And these are basically just spacers, and I just keep them on the mandrel. So I put them back on there, screw the end on. Because the spacers I don't really turn to. I may, depending on what they are, but mostly they're just to space things so they fit and work, right? We remember which one's the front and which one's the back, right? And when we put it together, we'll look for this grain matchup, and it'll be there, right? And so when the pin is together, that's important. So what we'll do is take the tip, which is that one, and that just barely fits in there. And then you can take spacer blocks out. And you can do this, people do it in the drill press and everything else. But this just...
No glue.
Oh no, it's a tight fit. And now, this is not that great, so if you feel that, you'll see I turned the blank the wrong, you can almost see that, right? You can see the step edge there, right? I might have used the wrong one, I don't know. But the hard part is to take it out. You can't really take it out, right?
I wouldn't lose any sleep over it.
No, it's just for demo. About the same. So this other tip would have been better because it's just slightly smaller, right? But I'm not going to worry about that. So then, if I don't have all of these in here, so this one now goes in. This is the mechanism that runs the pin in and out, right? So this goes in as well. And I don't know if you can see, there's a groove on that. And that's the almost don't go past point, right? Because if you go too far, and I'll show you. So anyway, we can put this in here.
That groove really shows up from here.
And it's important to have it lined up fairly straight, right? And I have done it in my bench vise, and it does work. But then when you put this in here, what you're looking for, and this pin has just a little waxy knob on the end of it. It needs to come off. I think that just protects the little roller ball. And these kits, I haven't used these kits since I think I had a bunch of these, and I think I got them for the kids at school when we were doing that sign for schools. There. So that's just your straight thing. So then this gets turned in there, and as you turn it, you see it disappears, and you turn it, but it should come out just a little bit farther, right? So what you do is you take this out, put this back in here, and then you just small adjustments, because you can't take it off. You can't take them out, right? So then, does that look like it's suitable to people, right? It retracts, and it goes. That's almost enough, right?
Almost enough. I think it.
So if you would like a little more, you just put it back in there, and we can go just a tad more, right? And that's the advantage of the pen press, is you can make really fine adjustments. So that'll probably work, right?
That
Maybe
looks much better, yes.
that much, but it's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, then we take this piece, the rest, so we've got the little knobby and the pin clip, and this is the top end of it. So we put that on there, and now we probably have to and again, fairly straight, so everything's kind of lined up. And then you just push that into where it's tight, right? And so you can see that I got just a little bit here. I could have taken it down just a little bit more, right? And this is fairly close, so it clips into your pocket, right? And then, don't forget this. This is the little centerpiece, which just slides over, goes in the middle. And then this one just slides on there. And so if you want the pin to where it, and I don't know, I think we're pretty close there, but, and you can twist that just a little bit. Does that look like the grain match?
I think that looks pretty darn
Pretty good.
close. Yeah.
So then when you turn it, of course, it'll be out a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, and you can see I'm just off just a little bit in here, off a little bit, and this one here. But that's what you end up with, right? And then it fits in your pocket.
Keith,
And so,
awesome demo, Keith.
so pin turning, when I first got my lathe, I got some pin kits with it. I bought it used. And I made pins. The first Christmas, everybody in the family got pins. So I made them quite a number of them, and fairly quick, right? And once you do it for a while, it does get easier and quicker because you remember what you need to do, right? And so the only thing I will say is if, you know, anything will work for a blank. Wayne pours a lot of his own blanks, right? He's got a little mold about that size or whatever it is. And when he does epoxy work, he just throws scraps, pieces, whatever that he finds, chips of wood, pieces of whatever, throws them in this mold and pours epoxy in them. He's got a vacuum tank, he sucks it out, and that's how he makes his blank, right? And I've seen clear blanks with feathers, computer parts, coffee beans is a popular one, pine cones, anything is good. I took one time and I had an old leather belt. I've got some round hole punches. So I cut out a bunch of discs that fit on the pen, on the tube, and I crazy glued them all together and squeezed it, and then I turned it. So the bottom part is actually leather that's turned, and it has a really different feel, and people pick it up and go, like, what, right? And so, man, use your imagination. Sky's the limit, right? It's like whatever you can get in there and turn will work, right? You can buy, I was looking the other day and saw some kits. Some of them are like the wood for the kit. I did one for my granddaughter years ago when I first started, and it was a teddy bear, and it's pre-made. You get all these little pieces. It's almost like a jigsaw puzzle, and you take these pieces and glue them onto the blank and everything like that, so they're done. And then when you turn it, looks like this little teddy bear hanging on to whatever he is, right? But I saw some of those the other day. You can get flames, you can get everything. Some of them are like $80-90 just for the wood kit, for the pen kit, right? But you can do whatever you want to do, right?
Great way to use up small scraps.
Oh, you know, and if you had a whole bunch of little ones like this, glue them together, use them, right? Like yeah, you can just do anything you want, right? So other than that, I'm not sure what else I can tell you. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, a little finicky, but it is fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy pens.
Well, thank you very much, Keith.
Okay.
Great demo tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks. Bye.
Okay.